Hey reader, welcome back to the channel. This is Centaur here, and today we are continuing in our So You Want to Play series by looking at a mechanized German Panzergrenadier list. Now, this is one that certain people have asked me about, mostly because Panzergrenadiers are kind of one of those interesting units in that they kind of feel like their own subtype in the German book, even though they are not one of the official subtypes. Because they play so interestingly, right? Where, they're getting bonuses to move in and out of transports. They're the only way the Germans in the German third edition book can take 2 light machine guns on a regular unit, and they don't take as many wounds. And Germany gets access to some very interesting armored transports. They don't have, I think, the best selection of armored transports in the game, but they are very interesting and they're very good. I personally think actually it's a minor nation, I think, that actually has the best access to those. And I don't even think it's necessarily Italy. I think Italy's access is great. I think they're probably number 2. There's another minor nation, which we'll be talking about in a couple weeks, that I think has even better access than this. But it does make for a very interesting way to play Germans, and you don't tend to see as many people running them. So I decided, you know what? It's been a little while since I've done a semi-historical sort of challenge as regards to the series. Mostly I just take something big and expensive that nobody likes to run. So we're gonna soften the palate, just cleanse the palate a little bit today by talking about German Panzergrenadiers and how you could run that as a functional, effective, competitive army in Bolt Action 3rd Edition. So for starters, we're going to look at why people don't tend to do this, ironically, even though it is very cool. Then we're going to look at what it offers you and why this is appealing over and against stock standard German on-meta builds. We're then going to look at how I would build it out. And again, I'm not saying this is necessarily the best army, but I think it has some very interesting options available to it that makes playing against it very, very tricky. And then we're going to look at what the list should accomplish for you. We'll talk through each of the scenarios and how you should go about it. And then we'll talk about thoughts on how to expand to 1250, but I'm just going to let some of the cat out of the bag right now. I do think this list performs better at like 1100 to 1250 in terms of options. I do tend to think in general, Germany tends to perform better at 1100 to 1250. 1000 is fine. They've just got so many really cool toys that are competing for attention that it's hard to choose which ones you want without leaving something cool at home. I think even more so true for Panzergrenadiers by virtue of the fact that they really are incentivized to take a lot of doodads and extra equipment, and you'll want those in order to make them more effective. So to start off with, why don't people like running these? Well, first of all, because this is expensive, right? If you're running a mechanized German list, you're paying for transports, which might be armored or might be unarmored, but especially true if they're armored, right? You're then also paying for men that need to go inside of those, and you're probably not running 5-man squads. You're probably running like 6 or 7-man squads, so that way when they advance toward the enemy, they'll have some level of staying power in there. Then there's all the equipment that they probably want to bring, and then there's just all of the normal stuff that you would want for a German army list, right? You're probably going to want things with cool anti-tank guns because Germany has a lot of things that have really good anti-tank guns. They get access to a lot of good autocannons. And so if you're looking at all of these tools, you start asking yourself the question, well, why would my big shtick be my guys can get in and out of transports better when that might cut me off from running yet another armored vehicle, right? The other option is you can skimp on transports. Okay, you can take trucks. You can even take horse-drawn wagons, which is a 6-man transport capacity vehicle for 12 points in experience, which is less than a Kubelwagen or other type of civilian car. And it fits 6 people. The trade-off is it's literally a wagon pulled by a horse, so it's only DV3. But it's a wheeled vehicle, and it could be an effective means of transport. So if you really, really went cheap on this, sure, you can afford all kinds of things. The problem is you are very easy to remove literally any unit on ambush that's not a mortar, right? Because mortars can't technically fire from ambush because indirect fire you can't use from ambush per the rules. Like literally anything else feels great about its chances of removing you. In which case, yes, you bought a transport. It gave you an extra order dice a little. And yes, you get the Panzergrenadier bonus, so at least you aren't taking as many wounds if you're in a dying transport. But you're not going to be transported very far across the battlefield, so why didn't we just foot slog it in the first place, right? And save ourselves even more points. So, like, there's a lot of questions, okay? A lot of questions. Especially when, do you need like everybody mounted up, or could you just go with like a few people mounted up, right? Like maybe you only need one squad mounted up, which is very common. And you'll see that in our series here, right? In our So You Want to Play series, typically it's here's my one pushing unit and everybody else is designed for supporting fire, maybe two. Do we really need to lean into the mechanized side of things for a German list? That is actually a really legitimate question. Germany also gets access to great cavalry between Fanatic Veteran Cavalry with the SS Cavalry and then your Cossacks, which I think are actually even better, which can attack people on the other side of walls, fences, and other linear obstacles with no problems, no penalties, no defensive position for the enemy. Like, German cavalry is so dang good. There's a legitimate question of, yeah, sure, you can technically buy transports, but is it worth it? Like, is that actually valuable? And how much are you really getting out of that than you already had, right? And then there's the other question, which we already kind of hinted at, but critical to remember, like how many push units do you actually need, right? Do you need to lean into mechanized play, or can you have like a tiny bit of mechanized supporting your overwhelmingly not mechanized rest of your army? I think these are all legitimate questions. Okay. And I've played against a bunch of different types of lists. I've played against people who've used Panzergrenadiers in small numbers. And I think there's a lot to be said about, yeah, this isn't strictly necessary. Okay. But I think we're missing out on some things that are very useful. First and foremost, it makes for very mobile assault weapons. You can really load up on submachine guns and assault rifles and the like to get right up in your opponent's face for very quick burst removal by having them be easily mechanized up to move quickly across the battlefield. And you really cannot do it much better than with a half track, because you not only get double movement on roads if you want that, you get the ability, if you need to be able to move through rough terrain. So people who try to shenanigan away from things by popping through terrain, so haha, now it's harder for me to see you, you can solve some of those problems with a half track. And I think that that's extremely useful. It also makes clearing out a lot of the enemy infantry, their team weapons, their artillery very easy, because not only do you get those machine guns and those assault rifles at very close ranges, you also have the transport itself helping, which is something that cavalry don't really get to do. Germany also just gets really good punchy transports. So whether you want to have light howitzers, anti-tank guns, or Panzerbrüches on them, you get access to all of these, which can put pins on armor for all of them or actively remove armor in some cases with relative ease, especially since, again, half-tracked means it gets doubled movement on roads. So quickly closing to point-blank range and then unleashing with a pen plus 3, 5, 7, potentially if you're in a side arc, is really, really good. Okay. And can get you a whole lot of value off of just the transport, let alone the guys that are inside of it, which again, something like cavalry, it's not going to be doing. You also get reasonably costed mechanized infantry, right? Your Panzergrenadiers are great. Your Belgate Stug Riders are also really good in this regard. Mostly, it locks you into, you have to take a Stug, which we will not be doing today because I didn't have the points to do Panzergrenadiers plus Stug Riders. I didn't have those kinds of points. But like, if you were planning on already buying an armored vehicle and you were planning on buying a strong, durable, heavy AT gun style attack vehicle that can work your anti-armor, I mean, you might have already had a Stug, so now you just saved yourself 50 points worth of Hanomag, right? You saved yourself however many points worth of horses by virtue of the fact you already have a transport, so to speak, in the form of the Stug. So like there's a bunch of different options that can really save you points as you look at them. Not to mention, of course, the fact that with Panzergrenadiers, you're likely losing about half the casualties from being destroyed in a transport, right? If the transport that you're in gets blown up, the fact you're only taking D3 hits means, especially if you've got veterans loaded up, you might not take any wounds at all coming out of that. Whereas if you didn't have Panzergrenadiers and you ran literally anything else and they are in a cooked transport, you might lose a couple models. And that couple models could be the difference between you having what you need or not having what you need up front, which is important. The other thing, too, from a transporting perspective, is that you do get a really nice mix of both wheeled and half-tracked vehicles. You do also technically get tracked vehicles as well. The Landwasserschlepper can carry 20 people. That is not nothing, especially if you have a company commander nearby or inside, okay? But the fact that you get access to things that can get very quick, very zippy movement, even on an advance, so they can still drop stuff, is really advantageous. And so again, while I don't think Germany has the best set of transports, it has a really good set of transports. And I think that because of that, if you leave all of these at home, I do think you're leaving one of the things that's reasonably strong about Germany on the shelf. And maybe that's a mistake. So with no further ado, we have a very weird list. Okay, first of all, it's only 15 order dice at 1,000 points, which is the bare minimum that we allow. And I decided for this particular challenge, I wasn't going to require 100% Panzergrenadiers because I wanted to leave room for one supporting unit. So it could be a form of military police. It could be a Spotropen unit for infiltration, something like that. I landed on the Felgendarmerie for this one just because I felt like there's a reasonable chance I might try to bring things in from reserve, especially in outflank. And so I wanted to have Felgendarmerie around as an option for that. But suffice it to say, at least for now, starting with High Command, we're taking our company commander. We're taking him with an extra man, and we're giving them all pistols. You can drop the extra guy, but I found it was reasonable that I might want to have him with an extra bit of insurance in case of stray fire or something horrible happening. So I figured, why not? If I have the extra points lying around, I'll go ahead and take it. I wasn't going to spend it on anything else, so I went ahead and just added an extra guy. But you don't strictly have to do that. I also added a chaplain. Not strictly necessary for this build, and we'll talk about it near the end of the list on how you could economize if you want to do without him. But I did find it was at least a useful thing to have a form of pin removal, seeing as we're going to have a lot of open top transports. And I just want to have the ability to be able to, potentially make things a little more reliable in terms of activating. We've then got in our rifle platoon. We have a platoon commander. He has a pistol and experience because we really don't need him to be doing very much. Though worth noting, you have a point left over. You could give him a rifle if you wanted to. You then have 3 squads of Panzergrenadiers. These are all 7-man squads. They are all veteran. So off the bat, we already have 21 durable infantry. And in all of those squads, we're maxing out on submachine guns. We're taking 4 submachine guns in each of them. I am also adding 2 assault rifles to each of them. So out of the 7 guys, 6 of them are carrying assault weapons. That is 7 men with 13 shots. And then I've added 2 Panzerfausts to 2 of those squads. Now, I will be the first to say that Panzerfausts are expensive. And then there was definitely a side of me that was like, do I want to run these Panzerfausts in these squads, or do I want to take those points and throw them into a better armored vehicle? And I went back and forth literally up until about like 8 minutes before recording this video and decided, no, I want the Faust. But the short and long of it is that I want to have multiple things in the list that fire at higher than a pen +2. And I didn't have enough points to really throw all in on another armored vehicle to fill in number 5 in the list. And so because of that, I said, you know what? If I'm spending 60 points on Faust, and that even just gets me area denial against other armored vehicles, which kind of clears room for the transports to work, maybe that's actually advantageous. So I went ahead with them. Again, I'm not entirely sold on this. There are some tweaks and changes that other people may want to make. If so, shoot me your updated list, and maybe I'll even feature them in an update video on the blog. It would be fun. But suffice it to say, this gives us 3 solid units that can do very aggressive pushing. Because of the assault rifles, as we mentioned last week in the assault rifle video, I'm pretty sure it posted last week. I'm recording all these in a slew, so I don't actually remember when they're posted, but I feel like it was last week is when we talked about these. Some people don't like ARs. If you don't like ARs, you can drop them out of this. It saves you 36 points, right? Saves you 69 points if you drop the chaplain, you throw in another unit and, maybe call it another armored vehicle. And I'm sure you're going to live a great life with that armored vehicle. Okay, you might even have enough points to upgrade one of the armored vehicles we're going to talk about later. If you don't like them, you can drop them. If you don't like the Faust, you can drop them. There is some room here. What I am focused on here is that this unit now has a very reasonable threat range if I don't want to move up. Because now I have a 24-inch threat range on an advance with those assault rifles. 30 inches technically on the one rifle, but I'm not hoping for that to hit things. That means I can hold a back line on something like Seek and Destroy. I don't have to come out at you if I don't want to, right? It gives me a multi-purpose option that SMGs on their own don't do. And again, Panzergrenadiers as a unit can't take above 4. So we already maxed those out. I'm okay with having a few more longer range options for only 12 points more per squad. I think that's perfectly fine. We then have a unit of Felgendarmerie. We're taking those with pistols and experienced at 28 points because I like being able to bring things in from reserve, and because it was a 28-point order dice, which I needed 15 minimum in order to meet the requirements for this series. So here we are. And then we have a regular AT rifle, 2 inexperienced light mortar teams, because we need certain things we can run off the board or suddenly bring onto the board really, really late that I don't care about. And then we have the horse wagon that I was talking about before. This is 12 points, inexperienced. It's got 6 jump seats that are present in the wagony part. Literally a horse-drawn wagon, like from 200 years before, during Napoleonic times, and before that even, with like early. Well, I mean, I guess technically going as far back as medieval times, right? Like this is old tech, but it turns out it still works for transporting people. It's DV3, so you got to be careful of this one. But hey, if you need a transport for shenanigans and you don't want to worry about throwing away too much, horse wagon. May I recommend to you, we're going to be putting all kinds of weird crap inside the horse wagon in this video. And then we've got the armor platoon. The armored platoon's going to be led by a Krupp Protz armored car, which is weird because it's not actually an armored car. It's really just a field car. It's a heavy field car with a light AT gun strapped to the top of it, forward facing. And so for 65 points regular, 75 with command vehicle, this guy's kind of a quick bomb. That's the plan. We're going to throw this guy around. He's going to do 24-inch advance on roads or a 12-inch advance without. Try to get to point blank range as quickly as he can and just try to knock something out. And it turns out if you knock out almost anything in this game with this guy, you're probably making your points back, if not more. That's the thinking behind him. And if he's able to do that while being covered by everybody else, so much the better. Totally okay. And then we've got our Stummels. So we've got 3 Stummels, all taken regular. I did not buy the extra machine gun because I didn't have the points because I purchased too many ARs. That's what somebody in the comments is going to say. You know what? Fair. Who cares? I went ahead and did that. Or about too many Fausts. Somebody's going to say I dropped too many Fausts in here. But honestly, with the way this list is built, I've got so much small arms firing anyway. I don't feel like I'm going to need that machine gun. I feel like I'm going to want the howitzer, right? Because the howitzer is going to be useful against infantry. It's going to be useful against armored vehicles, and it gives us a lot more heavy weapons that we oh so desperately need against armored vehicles, which is part of why we're taking this. And with the goal that we're going to be running this thing up to point blank range, getting that 2-inch HE template to do pen +3 because we're hitting from the side, we won't be able to get a bonus for point blank range. But if we can get to the side, which is relatively reasonable with the mobility of this half-tracked assault self-propelled gun, we should have the ability to do reasonable damage against on-meta vehicles, right? Obviously, against something that's DV9 or DV10, it's going to be problematic. But against anything on-meta, DV6, 7, or 8 for their attack vehicles, these things are going to work just fine, right? If nothing else, they're going to be putting down pins, helping to lock things down so that hopefully they fail. They may end up cracking through and doing stuff. Even if they just put the enemy armor down, that's perfectly acceptable for what we're doing here, right? If we can take something more than 93 points out of the match for the opponent with these, that is a win. And I think we can probably find a way to do it. And so, again, I don't think this is the strongest list that I've ever made. I would not like to fight the Soviet list that I built with the KV-1 with this one. I feel like the KV-1 would clean up this entire list, not single-handedly on its own, but with the rest of the stuff we implemented with it, I feel like it would be a very easy fight. But I honestly think this has a very off-meta, weird way of approaching things, which is what we're going to launch into in about 3 minutes. So first of all, in terms of planning out what the list should do, okay, the Stummels are going to help us out with vehicle hunting because, one, they're going to deliver the Panzerfaust to point-blank range, which is how we're actually going to do stuff, okay? The Krupp Protz is going to YOLO to point-blank range and try to knock out as much as he can before he goes. And then, you know, the AT rifle and the Stummels, they can pin, possibly remove, but we're just going to plan on pins, anything else that might remain, okay? And honestly, that's not bad, right? With double Faust, you have a reasonable chance of taking out most armored vehicles, definitely all the on-meta armored vehicles. You have a reasonable chance of being able to take them on with point-blank range shots with a light AT gun. You know what? If you stack enough Stummels in the same area, you're probably going to end up getting hits that end up resulting in at least people going down, which allows you to then maneuver to the rear arc, etc., and just improve your chances of doing serious damage. For infantry hunting, the Stummels and the Vets are just going to mow down enemy infantry. And when you have 18 assault weapons pumping out 36 shots per turn and you still have a casualty you can take before you have to really mitigate into that, you're probably going to do just fine. The Stummels with their 2-inch HE templates, especially if you put them on ambush after delivering people, is going to really help to lock down potential counterstrikes, which is nice. And then with your campers, you got a lot of howitzers and you've got some light mortars. So camping is not going to be easy to do. You've got 5 templates per turn. If people want to just sit somewhere, even if they want to go down, that's perfectly acceptable because you're still going to be chipping away and pinning them so that way the rest of your units can walk around doing what they want to do. And once your Panzergrenadiers get within point-blank range of that unit, they are going to be toast, okay? So all we need to do is really lock down the campers. That's all we need to do. And if we do end up removing some of them or forcing them to move, all the better. And then from a morale bubble perspective, it's pretty small, right? We only have the one platoon commander, we have the company commander, and the Krupp Prots is kind of just free to go off on his own because he doesn't strictly have to be with anybody else. Though, obviously, there's a very reasonable chance he's going to be with at least one of the Stummels just because wherever he goes to YOLO up, it might be a good idea to bring some other stuff with him. The joy of company commanders. You can give orders to the Stummel, to a unit inside the Stummel, and the Krupp Prots, and something else if you want to, right? So you could set the stage with an AT rifle, maybe trying to pin something, and then you can start YOLOing these vehicles in and start dropping things off and start going for the kill if you really need to. So when looking at Seek and Destroy, your company commander is going to snap two Stummels and two vets. You're going to advance them forward, and they're going to crush the enemy. Okay. Over the course of the game, those two Stummels and those two vets, you're probably going to lose two of those units, but you're probably going to remove about 6. You're going to remove, on average, at least one armored vehicle because of the 4 Fausts that are present in that setup. Probably closer to 2, and then you're probably going to remove 1 to 2 infantry units for each of the each of the assault weapon systems before they end up going down. But yeah, you have the ability to do quite a bit of damage. And the nice thing about the Stummels is, especially if you're knocking out a lot of the armored vehicles and probably the AT that's in the area, if you really need to, yeah, they can stay there and provide support. Howitzers are a great way to get enemies to go down, which means they aren't going anywhere, which means getting to point blank range of them is relatively easy to do with your assault weaponry. But it's also a great way, even if they're not doing a lot of wounds, like it pins people down so they're less likely to do wounds back to you. And when you have 2 7-man squads of veterans running around right in people's grills, it tends to have an effect on their ability to fight back against you, right? You'll be able to maintain without coughing up victory points for quite a long time. Your platoon commander is then going to snap to the 3rd Stummel with his vets. I anticipate we're going to lose 2 units over here too, probably the Stummel and the platoon commander, to be honest. But between the Stummel and the vets, I think they're going to remove about 3 units. And I think that's really, really good news, right? I mean, so far we are way ahead of where we normally are, and we don't have a whole lot of throwaway units, right? Like, sure, from an anti-armor, like the AT rifle and the Krupp Prots, they're going to try to fire at point-blank range with the Krupp, and then the AT rifle is just going to do what he can. I'm assuming you're going to lose both, but I think you're probably going to remove an armored vehicle with this. I think the YOLO move with the Krupp Prots, especially if it's the very first activation of the very first turn and the enemy doesn't have a lot of stuff on ambush, I think you come out swinging and you knock the chocolate out of something, and then comes everything else, right? And they're going to be sending all kinds of stuff just to try to jump on that vehicle, setting you up for your Stummel advance. I think that that's actually really effective. But even if you lose both of them, again, you're still up, right? By a substantial amount. And so even if we assume that the horse wagon just hides all game, if we assume that the light mortars just wait until really late to go in the turn, go down if they get targeted by something, we assume you lose one, right? We assume they aren't shooting at all the entire game. Even if that's the case, you're still winning. You're still coming up ahead. And that assumes you don't just blow through one side and take substandard casualties for any of the stuff we've talked about earlier, right? Which can happen. So in my mind, this is eminently winnable. I don't think it's as comfortable a padding as some of the groups we've looked at. But if nothing else, 21 veterans pumping out 36 assault weapon shots plus 3 rifle shots and having access, if they want to 2 Fausts if you feel like you don't need all of that volume in a given turn. I think you've got it. I think you can do a lot of damage without really suffering all that much in return. In worst case scenario, one of these veteran units dips out and the others rush in. I think you can really make this work. When looking at key positions, again, there's going to be 5 to 7 objectives, so we want access to about 4 of them, okay? Could be as little as 3 of them, okay? We want 3 to 4 of them under our control. And so because of that, we're going to advance the Stummels and the vets with some officers to 2 of the objectives. I would say the central objective, if you have one of those, as well as just any other one. And the Krupp Prots just goes with them just to help provide pressure to the enemy and just, again, to keep your opponent on the back foot, okay? Your AT rifle and your mortars are going to hold the back objectives. You can also use the horse wagon to block line of sight to one of the objectives, okay? You just put, call it your AT rifle team, although, that might be more useful. Maybe your light mortar team, but you choose one of them. And you just park the horse wagon in front. And the light mortar may not be seen anymore, which is nice. And it may not be able to shoot, but that's fine, because now the unit we have holding that objective isn't going to be shootable until they destroy the horse wagon, at which point, oh no, it still remains, right? It's not like it disappears, right? It remains on the battlefield. And so because of that, again, it's a semi-castle that you can set up, which I think is really effective. But I think this is going to help you immensely with just helping to maintain control of that one. You don't have to worry about it, especially if you're pushing in that same area of the board. Your opponent isn't going to be able to sneak people around to try to contest that objective. It's going to remain yours, which is really, really good news. And so on the whole, like, yeah, you are relatively slim in terms of backline objective holders in this list, but that's only because you're taking the fight so aggressively toward your opponent, throwing so many small arms weapons, so many close range AT weapons at them, that they really aren't going to have a lot of time to think about your backline. Okay, this is the nice thing about aggressive play, is that you can really cut off whole lines of advance because you're pressuring them to do defense instead. And even if they do eventually wipe out a bunch of those forces, as long as they don't have enough time in the game to get back to where you are and contest the objective and actually remove it from you, then you win, right? So again, I feel like as long as you are intentional and strategic about where you push and when, I think this is going to be a lot of pressure that the enemy's not really going to be ready for, and they're not going to have a really strong plan on how to deal with. When looking at top secret, we are going to place the Stommels as far forward as possible. We're going to keep our officers inside. We're going to keep our veterans inside. We're going to do the best we can with putting people as far forward and aggressively as we can, and ideally on roads. Then what's going to happen is that on the first day, the company commander is going to snap to 2 of the Stommels with 2 of the veteran squads. And they're just going to get to the objective. One of them is going to jump out and grab the objective. I recommend that this be the veteran unit that does not have the Panzerfaust. This was a strategic decision on our part, okay, to intentionally run one of them without, and it was for this specific scenario, okay? They're going to run out, and we're then going to screen them off with these transports and the other veteran squad, which can jump out and just start laying shots into the enemy as needed for as long as possible. Okay, for the whole rest of the game, that veteran squad is just going to be running backwards. If he happens to find his way into a horse wagon or something else like that, when they're really far in the back because we've lost a casualty or two, sure, you can jump them in and you can rush them off the very next turn. It's all easy. But in general, our plan is just going to be throwing as many units in the way, winnowing down the enemy with all of those shots we have so that they can't actually catch us in time. Big thing to remember. You want the chaplain to stay with this veteran unit as long as possible. You want him to always end his turns within 6 inches, so that way, if needed, he can activate, remove a pin off of them in case they're still being shot at to help maintain that they actually keep running and they don't go down. That would be ideal. But yeah, that's literally the plan. Relatively straightforward, mostly because, again, like we have so much of our army set up to move in double movement on road sort of carriers. It could be really, really difficult not to win this one, to be completely honest. Then we got demolition. We're going to put our wagon with our platoon commander and our Felgendarmerie in reserve. This is very important, okay? The reason why we're going to do this, of course, is we're going to be outflanking this unit in, assuming that it's possible to us. We're not facing a Hungarian army. And in as much as that's happening, that means we're now going to have an 8 of morale on the inexperienced horse wagon, becomes 9 from the Felgendarmerie, becomes 8 because they're coming in from reserves, becomes 10 because they've got a platoon commander in there with them. They're going to activate just fine, which is excellent. Our AT rifle and our light mortars, while we could have potentially put double light mortars inside of the wagon, and we'd still be coming in on 9, which is perfectly reasonable in terms of coming in, I kind of wanted them for guarding the objective, if for no other reason than saturating the area with bodies, right? To make it a little bit harder for people to sneak units in because of the 1-inch rule. And then we're going to have our Stommels and our vets and our company commander and our chaplains and our group prots just push toward the enemy position, removing as many units as possible. We're just going to plow through as best we can. Serious press. And the nice thing about this press, unlike a bunch of the others that we've looked at, is they can't just say, oh, okay, well, the way they're going to actually take it is they're going to use the whole shenanigan of dropping out that platoon commander with the Felgendarmerie. That's not actually the plan, right? The plan is we've got 3 veterans, 3 squads of veterans, 21 veterans across 3 squads. And if we get a number of those in there, we may not need to bring these guys in from outflank and actually get them in range. There's a very good chance we will, but we don't strictly have to. And if that's the case, we have options that most of our lists in the series do not actually have, right? Because now they have to concentrate their force to wipe out these veterans. And they pretty much have to wipe out all of them. Because not only do we have a lot of weaponry being toted around in a lot of assault weaponry. So if we're in close, like we're mopping through things left and right, right? And we've got redundancy. It's not like we have the one squad doing this like we normally do in this series. We have 3 of them, okay? And so because of that, like they're going to have to keep so much of their firepower at home. I'm not sure they'll be able to really count on a turn 3 push to actually try to remove the units that we have. And as long as our units that are on the objective are just going down behind heavy cover, they're all still going to be there, right? We're going to have defenders waiting for whoever may try to come in. And then what's going to happen is as we start getting to turn 3 and we know things are going to happen, okay, we want to be careful on using our AT rifle team. The AT rifle team, we need him to be able to attack enemy transports before they come in. So that way, as they're coming around wherever they may land, he can start taking shots at them in order to probably not remove the transport, but especially if they're going on the lighter end, he might be able to. And even if he doesn't, at least put pins on there so that way when they activate, when the units coming out activate, they do at least have to now perform an order test, and maybe they fail and they stay inside, right? And that's advantageous for us in terms of just helping to close them off. And then remember that, we're going to try to push those veterans into range. If they do end up making it in, fantastic. It helps our margin. If they don't end up making it in, it's fine as long as they kept the enemy tied up, because then we're going to advance the wagon in from outflank, and then the guys inside are going to run or advance into range, and we're going to roll for all of them. And in an ideal world, we blow it up turn 3. Okay, nice and simple, relatively easy. The nice thing about this list, too, is that one of the more common ways to handle our whole shenanigan play here is to just castle with like 2 DV9 tanks. And the only space that you can move into is like the 1-inch gap that's between those 2 tanks, which means you need to blow both of them up. The nice thing about this list is that this list not only has a light AT gun that can quickly zip up and maybe knock out one of those tanks, but in addition to that, we have 4 Panzerfaust. So if we get up there and the 2 guys, I would always just put them on the 2 guys holding the assault rifles, and I would just make those the last 2 guys other than and heck, even the NCO. You can even take them after the NCO because we're Germany. We don't even care about that, right? You can take the rifle and all 4 submachine guns in these squads before you take the guys with the Panzerfaust. Save those ones for last. And then just have them blow them up at point blank range, right? Nice and easy, super quick. And once those 2 things are gone, the castle's not only gone, now if you need to, you can put your veterans or your company commander for that matter in between. And now being able to see people past those castle tanks is extremely hard to do. Like, it's extremely hard to do. They have to come to a specific place in order to come and see that. And if they're getting to that specific place, there's a very good chance that your assault weaponry is going to be in range of them. So my encouragement is, even if you see a castle, stick with the plan. The plan works. You have the tools. You can do it. Just keep those Panzerfaust alive and wait until you have a good moment to shoot them. When looking at hold until relieved, the last of the deployment-based, the objective-based scenarios, we're going to put the Stummel with maybe like, we're going to have a bunch of those. We'll have the company commander nearby. We'll put the veterans inside. We'll have the platoon commander inside with one of them. I would also bring the chaplain with them. I don't think there's a problem with that. And just deploy them as far up as possible, okay? And then on the first dice, which 15 order dice, you have a reasonable chance of getting the first dice. You want to send that company commander, just give an order to him, have him snap 2. The 2 Stummels, they both advance up. The 2 veterans advance or run out. If somebody else is already activated, just wipe them out. You've got, what is that? A lot. It's like, wow, yikes. Yeah, that's like over 20 shots. Right up close against the enemy. Yeah, like 26 shots right there against the enemy. Whatever it is that they have at point blank range, they're dead, right? Especially since they couldn't go down. Even if they're in heavy cover, they can't go down because they jumped out of a transport or something like that in order to claim, right? And so because of that, we're just going to wipe them out, right? It's very, very simple to do, which we love. And then once you've got it, then for the rest of the game, literally it's just throw everybody on top of it. Use the wagon to body block. Just put it in front of everything. If people want to destroy it, it's just taking up space. And now nobody can move through it. And if they don't blow it up, then it remains an order dice that helps to give you order die patrol, right? And so because of that, I think this could work, right? You can keep the light mortars back because obviously light mortars do very well in the middle of the board if you really, really want to. But if you feel like, I don't really need the firepower, I just need to park people on an objective, like you could just use light mortars to just throw on there and just go down every turn, right? You don't strictly need them to be shooting in order to actually make value back because the value is just we don't lose the objective. and we don't lose the objective as long as we have at least one unit on it. And then finally, with breakthrough, we're going to put the platoon commander and the Felgendarmerie in the horse wagon. Nice and simple. And on turn 1, we're going to do what we always do, because I really don't like the way this thing is written. Okay. If it is possible, just run the wagon off the map. You get doubled movement on roads. That could be a 48-inch run. Even if it's 24-inch run, depending on what your deployment styles are, you might actually be able to touch the deployment zone edge of the opponent on the sides from where you start, believe it or not. So you can actually get off the board as early as the first activation of turn 1. And that scores you 3 units, at which point you don't need to cross the board at all. You can just sit back and play defense the entire time. If it's not possible to do that, go down with the platoon commander and the Felgendarmerie whenever it feels convenient to do so. And then just wait and activate the horse wagon absolutely last as needed. Maneuver him up to a place where he's going to be safe to set up for turn 2, and then just lather, rinse, repeat until you actually get this thing to work. Control the center. Keep the enemy from moving up. The nice thing is, between all of your assault weapons, your opponent's really going to think twice about getting too close without proper preparation and going in on those. You've got the Stummels, so you can just put your howitzers on ambush. And as people start moving up to places where they aren't in cover, you start just lobbing shells at these guys. You're going to remove a lot of units. Okay, a lot of models are going to get removed. And your supporting fire units are literally just there to pressure the enemy, hopefully make them go down, cause them to maybe advance and take shots instead of just performing all pell-mell runs. All of that, I think, is advantageous for you, right? Again, I think you win. I think you've got this, especially if you've got like straightaway style roads that take you from where you want to go to the edge that you want to end on. Like, it's just so easy to do it with this list. Mostly because, again, we mechanized everything, right? So fast-moving transportation is something we do really, really well. So with that knowledge, what would I do? Well, there's a couple things. First of all, if you like buying equipment, you can actually buy an additional assault rifle for each of these squads and make it so now you've got 7 men each with 2 shots if you want to. Okay. Some people really like the idea of everybody is contributing large volume. Some people really like the idea of having a casualty or 2 that they can take, so that way they're not losing a whole lot of points on equipment on the first time they suffer a casualty. And some people just really don't like assault rifles. And fair enough, we talked about those people last week. So there's that. So you may want to pass on it. But also, like, you can add Faust to the 3rd squad. If you choose to drop the assault rifles, again, you're saving 36 points. You're saving 96 points if you also drop the Panzerfaust out of this. If that's the case, you have a lot of points to work with, right? I mean, you could add a Panther to your list just by dropping all of that at 1250, right? So there's that. You also could add a heavy weapons platoon. The big advantage of doing this is that in key positions, you are stretched a little bit thin when it comes to objective defenders. So having like machine gun teams just for helping to winnow people down, more access to AT rifle teams could be advantageous. You might even be able to drop the light mortars altogether, which some people really like light mortars. Some people don't. I think the big question is, what do you actually need protection from? And if you're worried about, well, I want more ability to pin armor, I think the AT rifle team might get you better value. You could add an armored vehicle, obviously, because we've still got a slot left available for one. You could also very easily upgrade the Kruppprots to a DV7 or DV8 armored car. And one thing that may not be a bad idea is you just replace the Kruppprots and spend all of your extra points on like 2 Panzer IIIs. You could also do like 2 Panzer II Luxes in case you want that extra fast movement and you want that speed for quickly getting up to point blank range and hitting people, just like we had before. Obviously, that's going more on meta, right? In terms of the way people tend to go, and but still technically legal, right? We haven't cut into our Panzergrenadier style here by doing that. So if that's what appeals to you, again, this is why I think Panzergrenadiers, especially if you really want to lean into it, it does work better at 1250. I think you just have more tools and better tools available to you. And the other alternative is, if you're like me and you don't mind playing off meta a bit, you could add an artillery platoon. One of the biggest issues you have with this list is that you have like no air defense. So if somebody's running a bunch of air observers, you could find that you don't have nearly as many tools as you thought you did. Okay. And that can be problematic. You can also use it to add like anti-tank guns for super cheap in case you want to like add some extra, key position style objective defenders, but you maybe want them to pack a little more punch in case you're, waiting for enemy armor to come on through, something like that. You can also add multiple rocket launcher systems, which can be really nice because if nothing else, it spreads out enemy defenses. And spread out defenses are a way easier to wipe out with small arms fire. They're way easier to wipe out with assault weapons. And it also means that, generally speaking, there isn't going to be nearly as easy a chance to counterattack against the units that you're dropping off. So I could see the multiple rocket launchers being a really good addition as well, possibly even more useful than the armored vehicles, interestingly enough. But you have a lot of options, which is, again, not surprising because it's Germany. But it's also not particularly surprising as I reflect on it because we've already covered the bases of we need a lot of durable infantry because we've got that. We need volume for actual removal because we've got that. We need maneuverability and speed so we can get where we need to go. We've already got that. And we need to have the ability to move through multiple types of terrain, which we already have. So now the real question is just how do we augment this with additional firepower to make sure the infantry survive for a little bit longer? And that you can do very easily with Germany because a lot of German tools do that. And that's the video. If I was running straight Panzergrenadiers, this is probably how I would do it, more or less. I might make a few tweaks here and there. Some of it, I do confess, is just novelty of it, right? So do you really need 3 carrying people? Probably not. I decided, hey, it's a challenge, so I'm going to make it a little more of a challenge. And I guarantee nobody sees lists like this. So that means it technically counts for the purpose of the series because we're not here just to recreate what you always see. But what do you think? Is it too weak in the AT department because you're relying overwhelmingly on Pen plus 2s, except for the YOLO Panzer, light AT guns and a couple of Panzerfausts? Is this like groundbreaking for you? And you're like, dude, you threw together like a bunch of my favorite stuff, and now I finally have a list that I can use that maybe works for it. Whatever your thoughts may be, because I know a lot of German players have a whole lot of thoughts on this, like, where's the spa tripping unit? Please do let us know down in the comments below, and I will see you next time.